Welcome back, my Be Health Empowered family, to another episode of Excuse Me, Doctor. My name is Dr. Melissa Clark. Please call me Dr. Mel. I am delighted because I get to be with you once again this Monday evening for a wonderful show. And if you are joining us for the first time, please remember to hit that like if you're listening to us on Facebook. And if you are on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. We are here specifically to make sure that you're getting all the information, the health related information that you need to make wise decisions about your health, not just for yourself, but also for your family and for your community, and to be your own best health advocate when you have to navigate the healthcare system. So, in order to do that, I have to have with me my wonderful co-hosts, Mr. Wayne Bruce and Miss Lila Mays. How y'all doing tonight?
We
There you
cool,
are.
Dr. Mel. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good.
We
Now
all
we
here?
can start to create that amazing week for ourselves. All three of us are here together. And
Indeed.
how's your week been so far?
This is a great start to to a short week. So I'm happy. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that it? Is that it? I had a long weekend. I had a very long weekend because I was
Why'd you have a
celebrating.
very long weekend,
I was
Brother Wayne?
celebrating.
What were you
Cele-
celebrating, Brother Wayne?
it was my birthday.
Ooh, we need
Happy
some sound effects
birthday. We
there
need
for
some
You
sound
real.
need
effects
some
for that.
sound effects? It was my
Yeah.
birthday.
Yes.
Happy birthday. There
Happy
you go.
birthday.
There you
Happy
go. There you
birthday,
go.
Maestro.
You know, I celebrated with friends. It was
And
wonderful.
that's the best way to do it.
It is.
Be
It
around the
is.
ones you love.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, you know, tomorrow's not promised, and I got that rude awakening uh on my birthday. Like I lost a friend on my birthday, so
Wow.
life is not promised. I just rest in power to the good brother Bruce Johnson, who was a fantastic, incredible man. So who happened to be a hairstylist. Like he was an incredible dude, but a college friend. So rest in power,
Wow.
Bruce.
Yeah, our condolences. But you're absolutely right. We got to live every day to the fullest.
Mhm.
And hopefully we do it healthfully, right? And that's why we're here to
Right.
try to, yeah, absolutely. Well, tonight is a special night because it is Howard University Joint Research Centers and Minority Institution Night, where we get to do this once a month with Howard University and with Miss Karen Parker, who is the project coordinator of the Community Engagement Corps at the Research Centers and Minority Institutions of Howard University. And welcome, Karen. How you doing?
Good evening, everyone. Happy birthday, Brother Wayne.
Thank
Wow. It's already a
Absolutely.
long week and it's Monday. What is
That's
happening?
right. Hey, but it's also a short week because this is Thanksgiving week. And
Mm,
before we get into that, because that's like part of what the show is all about, Karen,
yeah,
tell us a little bit about the Community Engagement Corps.
sure. So, thank you for the introduction. Happy to be with you all once again this month. What do we do at RCMI? RCMI stands for Research Centers for Minority Institutions. And my section is called the Community Engagement Corps. So, what do we do there? We do a lot of listening to our constituents, the public, our community that we serve. And uh, a big part of what I do is to make sure that the research that we do at Howard, that is RCMI funded, is relevant and important to who we're serving. So we do a lot of listening, we engage like what we're doing now, and we report back. So
All
happy
right.
to be here.
So, all about that engaging, that means that as we go through
Yeah.
our show tonight, we want y'all to put your comments, your thoughts, your questions, your random musings. Keep it PC though
you.
in the chat. in the chat because we are here for you. So, with that being said, thank you, Karen. And I mentioned Thanksgiving. What are y'all doing for Thanksgiving? Lila, what's on your plate? No
I
pun intended.
we're gonna do Friendsgiving. So me and my immediate family here. I'm in LA, and some of our good friends. That'll be Thursday. So I'm doing my part. They're doing their part, and then Friday is going to be Christmas movie marathon.
Wow.
Ooh, nice. There are a bunch of them
Wow.
on Netflix already. So,
Yep.
Hey
all
man,
right. What
gotta have netfish.
I gotta have Netfish. What about you, Karen?
What is netfish? Is it like bootleg
It's something.
Netflix? I'm
No, it's
scared.
something that my 85-year-old aunt said to my 90-year-old aunt. Hey, girl, do you have Netfish? And so ever since then, been calling it Netfish.
I love it. Well, I'm gonna be the Scrooge. It's been such a long year, so I'm looking forward to solitude, gratitude, meditation, preparation, and rest, especially this month. So I feel like, yes, there will be a lot of giving thanks, but it won't be connected to what I'm calling the culture of excess, which is, we've all done that, but I'm not doing that this time. I just feel the need to be very, very still. So I'm thinking about going up to the mountains with a friend.
All right, wonderful. Well, it's all about gratitude, right?
Yes.
What about you, Wayne?
Well, your boy got plans. So, I am look, I might as well come out and say it. I'm the cook for Thanksgiving. I cook all the meats. This year we're doing a big Thanksgiving with part of my family and part of my wife's family, and everybody's getting together, and I have all the meats like turkey, lamb, the whole junk. So
You
I'm getting
getting
to
the
cook. Who's
excess
bringing the
in?
mac and cheese though?
Who's bringing the mac and cheese? I guess that brings us to what we're talking about tonight. Is there such a thing as healthy and delicious versions of mac and cheese in our favorite side dishes?
Well, I need to know now before we start.
I think we're going to get the answer tonight. And even more importantly, is there a way to keep your family food traditions and still have them be good for you at the same time?
Yeah.
So we have two amazing chefs who are both health conscious. They're influenced by very different traditions, but they're ready to advise us about not just healthy eating, health, but also a healthy lifestyle. And it's centered around healthy food prep, but also ministering to the soul, right? Because it's called soul food, right? So we're going to dive into that. Remember, put your questions in the chat as we're going through it. And we're going to learn about how family food centered traditions can be healthy for everybody. So, our first guest is Chef Genesis Villarreal. She is a private chef based in Washington, D.C., who's worked in restaurants for 2 years and is focused now more on nutrient centered work in the culinary world. Welcome, Chef Genesis. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Super grateful and happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
Sure. And then we also have Chef Christopher Dom Hardy, also known as Chef Dom. He is the chef de cuisine at Bar Japonais in Washington, D.C. His culinary path was shaped by his history as a bodybuilder, as well as his travels through Asia. So we got questions. So we're gonna throw them in there. Welcome, Chef Dom.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. Karen, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. Jumping right in. Is it okay to call you both Chef Genesis and Chef Dom?
Yep.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you. So I will put this question to the both of you. Could you tell us a little bit about how your growing up experience informs your culinary practice in adulthood? We'll start with Chef Genesis.
Yes. So oftentimes when I think about my journey, just in food, it really starts from when I was super young. Ever since I could literally remember, I've always loved eating. That was my first love before even cooking and being in the kitchen. I just loved eating. And I feel like a lot of my drawing to food, just my interest in food, stemmed from the flavors that I grew up with. So big shout out to my mom for introducing my siblings and I to our culture's flavors from a very young age. I come from a Panamanian background. And Panama is highly influenced by, of course, Spanish culture, but also Caribbean culture as well. So I'm very familiar with those flavors. That's what I grew up eating. And if you guys have had Caribbean, Spanish, Panamanian food, you know that it is delicious. It is very flavorful. So of course, I couldn't help but just love food and love eating. So that's where kind of like my passion with cooking started since I was super young. And then just, as I aged, I still was in the kitchen even throughout my school years. I would, after school, I would whip up a very fancy snack for a middle schooler, pretty fancy, making pizza, making doughs and stuff at a very young age. And now I am 23 years old, and I decided to pursue my passion for the culinary arts out of undergrad. I went straight into restaurants. I started working as a prep cook at one restaurant. Then I worked as a line cook, and I really enjoyed my time there. I developed a lot of skills, became more confident in my skill sets as a chef. And now I'm working in a more nutrient-centered environment. I work at George Washington University. There's a culinary medicine program, so I manage the kitchen there, and I'm just very grateful to learn more about nutrition and how I can be healthier in my eating habits. So.
We're definitely going to dive into that. Chef Dom, same question. Oh, you're muted, sir.
Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There
My
we go.
apologies. For me, it started back when, being raised by my mother for a little while, being in the kitchen, watching her make pies, watching her cook, just sitting on a stool, just soaking in the smell and the seasonings of everything that she was cooking, to then being raised by my father. And turns out he was a great cook. And being exposed to his side of the family around age 10, that's when I, pretty much broadened my horizons. I realized that not only does my father cook very well, but all my aunts, all my uncles, they're all very great cooks. So with that passion, once, I became an adult, being in the military and things of that nature, I still had to feed myself. So there's been times where I might have called my parents or my father or my aunt, hey, how do you cook this? Hey, what do you put in this or what do you put in that? And then that's when it really started. I was always pretty decent at cooking, but I think that doing it over and over and over again and making big dinners by myself or going to potlucks with coworkers and things like that kind of broadened my horizons. I remember specifically one Easter, I was just moved into the barracks and I didn't really know anyone. And I wanted to do something. I didn't care who showed up. And I just spent a bunch of money, cooked a bunch of food. And next thing you know, I have lifelong friends, people that I would consider brothers and sisters. And from there, of course, that's what sparked my passion even greater, and I went to school, got my, education in culinary arts, and then progressed into a sushi chef from my background being in Japan, and just continue to grow after year after every year.
Oh, that's awesome. That is a rich history. I never would have expected that. Very glad to have you this evening. And just jumping off of your word about how you sort of launched everything with your Easter dinner, could you tell us what a holiday meal looks like at home for both of you? And we'll start with you, Chef Dom.
A holiday dinner for me, I would say, is a little bit of everything. For my particular family, it's very diverse. I have some family members who have more African background. I have other family members who have more of a Irish background. So when we come together, it's a lot of us, sometimes a little over 40, maybe 50 people. So with that being said, there's always a wide variety of things that we like, whether it's mac and cheese or a pork shoulder or cabbage or greens or green beans, things of that nature, many different pies, whether it's an apple, a pumpkin, or a sweet potato. of course, 5 different types of mac and cheese, because some kids, they don't want peas in their mac and cheese. Some kids don't want ham in their mac and cheese. I personally just want mac and cheese. So a little bit of everything for that aspect. I can say for a fact that one of my most favorite things to eat that I look forward to is making sure that my aunt always makes a jerk chicken or curry goat for a Thanksgiving, which I think is really interesting.
That's
All
that
right.
Caribbean influence. I love that. What about you, Chef Genesis?
Yes. So reflecting on Thanksgiving growing up, so it was always just my immediate family. It was 5 of us, including myself. And my mom, she was and is the chef of the family, alongside me now. I'm like Mildred Jr., that's my mom's name. But she was the one that cooked the whole Thanksgiving spread. She's an amazing cook. She is the reason why I do what I do today. But she does not like cooking at all. And she's very honest about that with everyone. She doesn't enjoy it, but she's very good at it. So Thanksgiving spread, it was your traditional American Southern spread: collard greens, yams, mashed potatoes, turkey, stuffing, cornbread, the whole 9 yards, but it was just her doing it. So a lot of those foods were boxed foods. So you had the stovetop stuffing. She did do her little zhuzhing and, put her own little creativity. So it was delicious. But yeah, a lot of boxed stuff, very carb and starch forward. The ratio of carbs to greens was very off. There was collard greens, green beans. That was the only 2 greens. Everything else was basically carbs and starch, but it was all delicious, of course. And yeah, just intimate, 5 of us, a lot of food, too much food for 5 people, but we ate it all and we ate it for days. So
All right. Well, I love to hear about your backgrounds and what influenced you both because, we're 2 days out from Thanksgiving, right? And people are in the middle of getting their menus together, of course, influenced by their background and culture, just like you guys are. And so the question that I have, and we'll start with you, Chef Genesis, is it possible to eat with nutrition in mind, but also get that good comfort food that is traditional to the season? So
yes,
we'll start with you.
it is absolutely possible. Like now that I'm older and now that I'm actually responsible for making Thanksgiving dinner, and especially in the field of work that I'm doing now, maintaining my culture and how I grew up eating and those flavors are super important. But now I'm wanting to just be more conscious about how is this food actually, a big thing in my family is we say grace. And one of the things we say in grace is may this be a nourishment to our body. A lot of the times the food is not nourishing at all. So I'm thinking, how can I maintain the same flavors that my mom had in her dishes, but in ways that's just more conscious? So it is absolutely possible to have your soul food be satisfying to your soul, but also be nourishing to your body and your loved ones' bodies. And there's so many different things and additions and switches that can be done. And I'm looking forward to sharing that throughout the course of this chat. So
Can you give us one example off the top?
yes, there's so many. But one thing that I can think of is it's not really a switch, but it's more so thinking about your ratios of what you have on your table. So certain things, for example, you don't really need both the dinner rolls and cornbread. I won't be having both in my table. I'm choosing one or the other because I feel like they both do the same thing, but it's like you don't need both. But I feel like, tradition, people are used to having it. They feel like they have to have both, but you can choose one or the other. And another switch that I'm thinking too is just putting in whole wheat wherever you can. So one thing that I can think of when you're making a pie crust, whole wheat flour, you can barely tell the difference. Easy switch, a little bit healthier, but there's so many, so many.
Okay. So you're focused on the carbs and getting the fiber in the carbs. So instead of white flour, thinking about wheat flour as a way to sort of decrease those insulin spikes when we take
Yeah,
in too much sort of sugar that doesn't have fiber to slow it down. Okay.
right,
I
right. And
like
I
that.
think I think that's a big thing for me because within my family, type 2 diabetes is huge. In my
Mhm.
culture, the basis of it is bread. My grandma eats
Mm.
spaghetti with rice. it's crazy, but that's
Yeah.
why I really think about carbs, because I see that as a huge problem within my family. So
It's really
Thank you.
conscious.
And
Yeah.
that is not just your family, that is pertinent to a whole lot of people's families. So
Mhm.
thanks for
yeah.
sharing that. Chef Dom, so Chef Genesis used the word conscious. How do you think about conscious comfort food?
Well, when I think of conscious comfort food, the one thing I think of is always make sure that you're aware of what it is that you're putting in your body and how much you're putting in your body. Um, when there were times where I would have to diet and I had a coach, and I'm getting ready for a show, but I was allowed, maybe what some people would consider a cheat meal. Um, that doesn't mean get one of everything that I want and eat until I'm completely stuffed. It means take your time, but still eat what you want. Take your time while you're eating. Let that food slowly start to make its way into, your digestive tract. And then once you feel like you're almost getting full, you can kind of pretty much stop there. Because sometimes what happens is us as individuals, we have a tendency, well, me, being in the military, we were trained to eat very fast because we had to get up and go and do what we had to do. So one thing I noticed that I did that didn't really work out well for me was that I was always eating too fast. Once I slowed down eating, I realized, wow, if I just slow down, I would actually get full without even finishing my whole plate. So portions are really important to me. I make sure I don't eat too many protein, not too much protein, but also not too much carb. The one thing I do feel great about that I can do all the time is I know that I can pretty much eat unlimited vegetables, just because on the fact that they're typically a lot less in calories compared to the carbohydrates or the proteins that I'm eating.
Thank you so much for mentioning how fast you eat, because as an emergency medicine physician,
Mhm.
I was always trained to eat fast because I never knew when I'd be able to take a break again. And that's one of the hardest habits that I've had to break is slowing down eating, because if you slow down, like you said, and eat your meal over a 20-minute period of time, the message can get to your brain, hey, you're full, right? So thank you so much for mentioning that.
Oh, no problem.
That's actually a great segue to my next question, and I'm going to send it over to you, Chef Dom. Um, you were talking about the slowing down piece, and I wanted to bring in a little bit of your history that you shared with us prior to this show. You were foundational in creating the food and beverage program at, is it pronounced Balian Springs in Virginia? And that's a place, of course, where people go to slow down and recharge. It's a wellness retreat. So I'd like to hear a little bit about um, what you thought about when you were creating those menus that are not only supportive of healing, but they're also comforting, and they're probably um, supporting of wellness.
Absolutely. One thing that I needed to consider is that there's going to be many different ethnicities and backgrounds coming to the spa every single day by the hundreds. So I had to think to myself, what can I do to give everybody a little bit of something that they like? Um, Part of wellness and having those retreats and kind of tapping back into that peace of mind and increasing your health overall is not just about always eating healthy food, but eating things that taste good to you as well. So with that being said, thinking of that, I wanted to lean more towards a Japanese cuisine. So the first thing that we did was, well, let's make sure we have a sushi bar with plenty of great options that are also either low in sodium. So we would choose maybe a low sodium soy sauce or something that might be gluten free, because nowadays you'll find that a lot of people are more allergic to gluten than you realize. So that was one key thing. The next thing was, making dishes that I felt was fulfilling, that would still make you feel a little full, like you were getting a lot, but still low calorie. So one of these things that we could do, right? Instead of making a regular pasta dish, there's other substitutes that we could do. Instead of regular pasta, why don't we just spiralize zucchini, and have a zucchini pasta? And these are other things that, I had thought about that definitely benefited the way I create menus for healthier individuals. And then, of course, there's some individuals that are there for health and wellness and honestly don't want to eat healthy. So, of course, so what do? You can have a slider burger. I even put slider burgers on the menu. However, it's not a quarter pound of meat. It's not a half a pound of meat. Just two small sliders, something, to fill you up a little bit, but that is still a little less calorie.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Now you mentioned zucchini pasta. I had that for the first time this past summer, and it was absolutely delicious. I was shocked because I don't like zucchini. So I was really surprised and I really enjoyed it. And that kind of brings me to the next question for Chef Genesis about the Mediterranean diet, because we associate pasta with the Mediterranean. And we know that the Mediterranean diet is touted for, it's been, researched and touted as being really good for your heart health, your brain health, decreasing inflammation, controlling weight. So, since it's so great, do people have to reject their traditional way of eating? You mentioned, your Panamanian heritage to, kick that to the curb and just focus on the Mediterranean diet? Are there ways to sort of get the benefits of it, but still retain whatever your favorite cuisine is?
Yes, that's a great question, Dr. Mel. You can absolutely implement the different points in the Mediterranean diet within your way of eating. I actually do personally have my own reservations towards using the term Mediterranean diet, just because I want these tenets to be as culturally sensitive as possible. And I want people to know that these tenets are built in a way to meet people where they are and make it easy for them to integrate these into their diet. So some main tenets within the Mediterranean diet, I want to come up with a new name, like the Live Healthier diet, the Blue Zone diet. But some of the main tenets are it's very plant forward, veg forward, fruits and nuts, more legumes, healthy oils and fats, limited dairy intake, more seafood, less land animal protein, limited red meat, and of course, controlling your alcohol intake as well. And it's a really nice, solid set of principles that allows people to just ultimately be creative, and you can still have your culture's food. For example, I grew up eating a meal that my grandma made, was white rice and cooked canned tuna with curry powder. Curry powder is actually big in Panama. And I made that a few days ago, but I switched out the white rice for quinoa and it was delicious. I was surprised by how delicious it was. So it's very easy to just keep those tenets in mind. And even when you're preparing your dishes for the holidays, think about how can I implement some more whole grains within my Thanksgiving spread? And it's a perfect way to be creative as well.
I love that term, plant forward. I just want to put a pin right there, because people get like turned off or like, oh my God, I can't do plant-based. But plant forward sounds a little bit more achievable. So I love that.
Yeah. Yes. I was actually pescatarian for almost 10 years. And I ended up figuring out that it wasn't for me. And what's for me is a plant forward, plant-based diet where I'm still having meats and protein because I just love them so much and I love the taste of it. But I'm making sure that I'm prioritizing plants within the meals that I make.
Yeah, we heard that from Chef Dob too. Lots of veggies.
Yes, yes.
I will always be team veggies.
I love it.
Coming back to that cultural question, though, we as a people, if you cut us, we will probably bleed rice. And so what I'm wanting to hear is it all rice? Or are some rices more nutritively powerful than others? Do we have to give up jasmine rice? White, like it's a little traumatic to hear that rice is on the no list. And I also would like some clarity, please, on exactly what a Mediterranean diet is for those of us who don't know.
Yes. So rice is my weakness. I love white rice. I love the versatility of it. And it's even something, just being completely transparent, that's even something that I'm working on. I'm still gonna have white rice. Like, that's what I grew up eating. But a big thing is portion. I don't even think the main focus of people eliminating white rice altogether. It's how much white rice are you putting on your plate? Of course, there's other kinds of rice that are much healthier than white rice. For example, brown rice. That's something that we use a lot in the teaching kitchen that I work at. We base our curriculum off of the Mediterranean diet, so brown rice is heavily used. So that is definitely, when it comes to rice, that is the healthiest rice, is the whole grain. So yeah, then you do have like wild rice as well, your rice medleys. Those are also much more nutrient dense than just regular white rice. But yeah, I still eat white rice, but portion control is a big thing, and I think that's a very important conversation to have as well.
And there's also black rice. There's also quinoa, like you mentioned before. So there are
Purple
other
rice,
grains.
forbidden
There's
rice.
barley, other things that you can throw in there. And I laugh when you said that when you cut us, we bleed rice, because I love rice too.
I
But I also
mean,
just have to, salute out to our ancestors from the Senegambia, who are the
exactly.
ones who brought rice cultivation to the United States and made it the art form that it is. Um, so, Chef Dom, you have a rich experience from living in Okinawa, Japan. You mentioned the barracks, so I assume that that has to do with your military history. And Okinawa, Japan is recognized as a blue zone. It's a place in the world where people live longer and healthier compared to other places on Earth. Oftentimes people get to ages of 80, 90, 100. Um, can you share some takeaways about a healthy lifestyle that you got from your time there, and how that's influenced your cooking?
Yes, absolutely. Also, to touch on the rice aspect, the one thing I've learned at my time being in Okinawa was that uh, I was taught that rice is the most eaten food, around the world. And that's just because
Mhm.
of how sustainable it is. And the one thing I've also noticed is that me living in Japan, Japanese people never strayed away from eating any type of rice, whatsoever. And that's one of the things that I really did appreciate. That's one of the things I really did appreciate about, you know, being inside of the culture. The thing is, the Japanese, they eat a lot of fish, a lot of plants, a lot of rice. However, the key thing about their culture that I notice is that that's different than most of our cultures, especially here in Western culture, is that they're a lot more active. They're up first thing in the morning. They're in the parks. They're stretching. They're doing yoga. I've seen 10-year-olds running up steep hills first thing in the morning on my way back to base. These are all things that are also a part of staying healthy. Yes, some people might consider rice bad, but I think there's a balance there, right? The stairs. Instead of catching a cab somewhere, I would rather just walk if I knew it was in, a good walking distance. So these are some of the things I've noticed that helped a lot. Of course, in the extreme amount of seafood.
Hmm. Oh, that makes perfect sense. And are there techniques that you learned in your cooking that can be ported to the Western diet, as you mentioned before, that were influenced by your time in Japan, that are particularly health promoting?
Yes, I think so. One thing that I like uh, is fried food. Okay. Now here we eat, a lot of fried chicken. Um, you go to festivals, you see fried watermelon, fried Oreos. Everything is fried, dipped in
Fried
grease.
donuts. Right.
Fried
Fried, don't
watermelon.
exactly. But out there, when I was eating fried food, it was like fried broccolini, fried broccoli, a little bit of shrimp tempura on the side, and those are some of the things that I noticed that was a little different. Also, when they prepare their foods, they have, well, they use a lot of steaming techniques, when it comes to their fish. Now, a lot of the flavors that they use come from sauces, so like mirin or soy sauce, things of that nature. And it's always typically has some type of wheat in it. But I've noticed that the gluten-free options are also, really great. But I think the key things that I've noticed the most was more so of the steamed veggies, the steamed fish, and the rice consumption. And when they fry their foods, they use different oils. Even a McDonald's in Japan versus a McDonald's in America, if you order the same thing on the menu, it's not going to taste the same because of the oils and things like that they're using to cook their foods in. It's a little bit healthier.
What are some of those oils?
Thank you.
To be honest with you, I do not remember.
Okay.
I wish I actually should do a little bit more research on that. If I could only
Find
go
out.
back to someone's kitchen.
Yeah.
And
We're going to
ask.
find out. It's interesting to hear you say that there's still this high percentage of fried foods, because I would have thought that would have been less of that in that diet. But to your point about more physical movement, I think that really can balance things out. And
And
then go
I
ahead.
was
I'm
just
sorry.
going to say before you ask your next question, I think that's one of the things that we can take away about Thanksgiving and about the holidays is
Right.
even if we eat that healthy meal, getting up and walking around outside, taking a family walk after, that immediately will help to bring down that glucose in your body that would normally go get deposited as fat cells or do other harm in your body. But if you just take a 10-minute walk after you eat, it could be a family thing that will help to mitigate and lessen some of the effects of that holiday meal. So
I remember in the meeting that we had leading up to this, there was a term, because I had done a little bit of reading about blue zones, and I believe Dr. Mel, you mentioned Okinawa is a blue zone as well. Yes, there is this term. Please correct me on the pronunciation. I think that it has to do with the philosophy of the Asian philosophy of only eating until you are 80% full. And I believe it's called hara hachibun. Is that correct?
Actually, yes, that sounds familiar.
Okay.
So basically, what that is when they would eat a lot slower, and basically whatever was on their plate, they would consume more of the vegetables and the protein, and about a little less of their carbohydrates or whatever carb that they had on their plate. So by doing that, they made sure that they didn't get over full to the point to where you have that bloated feeling. And I think that kind of goes towards my point that I made earlier about eating a little bit slower. Doing that actually helps a lot, especially with your digestive process.
I like that. I think I'm going to start doing that. Can I ask the last question since we're on?
Yeah, one last question before we go to the audience.
Okay, I just looked at the time. You just made reference to the differences between Western modes of eating and more Eastern modes of eating. So I'd like to know, how can people who are used to the way we eat over here, the standard American diet, begin to kind of work in more Asian-centered recipes and methods into their daily rotation?
I think the first thing that we could do is research, right? We have this wonderful thing, Google and YouTube. I promise you, it is going to be your best friend, even for those individuals that don't like to cook or don't feel confident cooking. I mean, I know for myself, I bought a rice cooker. I think it has been extremely wonderful to me, and I appreciate it so much. A lot of the foods that I like to cook, I actually have my pantries. My pantry is actually filled with Asian ingredients. So some of these things might be like a rice seasoning with just seaweed, or some of these things might be nori, or kombu, which is a dried kelp. These are certain things that I use and I combine with other sauces to kind of help create a flavor. And when you use some of these sauces and you create a little bit more flavor with these sauces, you can just marinate your meat or whatever protein that you're going to consume in that overnight, and that way it absorbs a lot of that flavor. So with that being said, you won't have to use as much salt, and other things like that to get the same profile. Like one of my favorite things to eat now, and I know I hated it for the longest, is tofu. I love tofu, but only if I cook it, the way I want to, just using a black garlic, suyu. Basically, a suyu is just a combination of a few various ingredients, whether it's soy sauce, mirin, and I use like a low sodium and a gluten free, and a little bit of black garlic, and I blend it together and I just soak my tofu in that. Instead of doing like a heavy flour, I just might dredge it a little bit and hit it with some breadcrumbs, fry it, and I actually get that full feeling. And I eat that with a small bowl of rice, and it's absolutely delicious.
And there are other flours too, like almond flour that's gluten free, where you don't have to use wheat flour if you're trying to get away from gluten.
Absolutely.
And I just want to get Chef Genesis in before we go to the audience. Can you name one or two aspects of a traditional holiday meal that you would update, and why?
One or two aspects that I would update. One aspect of the traditional holiday meal that I would update is I would actually implement tea time at the end of dinner. My family never did that. And I don't know too much about, actually, I'm lying. I am highly intrigued by just Japanese diet culture, the way of living. And I do know that tea is a big thing. It aids with digestion, especially eating all of that food. It'd be really nice to just have tea time at the end. It's a great way to connect with family, friends, loved ones. So I would add tea time. I think I actually might do that this year in my personal Thanksgiving. And another update that I would make to the traditional Thanksgiving spread is kind of like I mentioned earlier, plant forward. I would just put much more greens and plants within the spread. The traditional spread, unfortunately, it doesn't have many. At least that's what I grew up on, a spread that didn't have many greens. So I would put more of that, more fruit. Why not add fruit to the table? Just kind of like keep the tradition up, but be more creative and innovative as well. Doing things that I didn't grow up with, but I know is a good addition and is healthier. So yeah.
All right. Great. Well, we have to bring our audience in here. I know there got to be some questions out there. Wayne and Lila, what are you seeing in the chat?
Hey. Well, I have more comments than I have questions. And my first comment, not from me, but the first comment that I have received is be careful experimenting on Thanksgiving. Okay.
You got a couple of days. You have a couple of days to experiment before Thanksgiving, actually.
You might want to try out your healthful recipes before the big day.
You bet not experiment on Thanksgiving. I respect your chefs, but don't try it just on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But I think this is personally, I think the chefs have made some really amazing points. And I do think there can be some different, more healthful approaches to our holiday meals. But I think we have to start making those switches way earlier in the year so that our family members are not surprised by the switches come Turkey Day. Amen.
Amen.
Well, what I actually heard Chef Genesis say, though, is that she wouldn't necessarily change it. She would just introduce some new ones. So that way, nobody gets tripped up. They can still fall back on the regular stuff.
Allow people to have their options, but at least put a salad up there. I've never seen a salad at a Thanksgiving, but hey, it's not going to hurt anybody.
Right. I'm definitely.
I'm curious as to what experimenting means. I'd be curious to find
Oh,
out
I
what
can
that
give you an
means.
example. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
There's actually a viral video about mac and cheese where somebody experimented
right.
with mac and cheese on
No
Thanksgiving.
raisins in the mac and cheese.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
mean, but we didn't. Our
So,
chefs didn't
so
say anything about raisins in the
they
no, no,
mac
didn't.
no,
and
These are
no,
just
cheese.
the
no. We
comments
not
that people are
this.
very sensitive.
People are sensitive to
keep the
raisins,
raisins out of
Very
it.
sensitive.
but you need to keep them joints at raisin time. There's a raisin time. It just not in your mac and cheese, your potato salad, or anything that is part of our culture. It's just not a raisin time. But I would want to say this, if I can interrupt you, Lila.
Uh-huh.
Is you know, experimenting with greens is really important for me. So y'all don't really try to experiment with our traditional greens, but low sodium. I mean, our community is and a lot of other communities are wrecked with high blood pressure, and so we have a tendency sometimes to over salt and call it salt seasoning, and salt is salt. It's not necessarily a season, right? So people go crazy with it. But yeah, that's just bring more greens into your diet. And,
Well, to your point, Wayne, do the chefs have any suggestions about how to creatively use other options other than salt? Let's say with greens.
Yeah, yes. I absolutely. I think when you want to, I actually have high blood pressure myself, pretty elevated. But for me, when I'm wanting to diminish salt, sodium in my dishes, flavor building is huge. And you did touch on that, Chef Dom. When you describe the tofu, for example, letting it marinate, taking the time. That's why I'm really trying to prepare my dishes days in advance throughout the week, so I can take that time to marinate, let flavors build using herbs, things that do not contain sodium but will get maximum flavor. And then I'll still use salt, but that's just to enhance flavor. Salt is a flavor enhancer, so you just sprinkle a little bit. You don't need to at all, just to highlight the flavors that you've already built throughout hours of marination and whatnot. So yeah, and there's so many different resources. My Instagram is filled with chefs that share so many tips and tricks on how to elevate flavors in different dishes. So
Yeah, Chef Dom mentioned the nori, which is it nori fakaki or something like that? It's sort of
Yes,
a
it's like that nori, or you can call it like a furikake.
And what is it exactly, Chef Dom?
It's just a combination of various things, honestly. But you have to be careful about some nori and some furikake if you are allergic to wheat, or if you are lactose intolerant. Some might not contain those two ingredients, but that saltiness that comes from the nori, I like, especially on my rice, because then I don't have to add any salt or anything of that nature to it. But you have sesame seeds in there, chopped up seaweed.
And nori is seaweed, right? It's a type of seaweed, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
hey,
Did you have a question, Wayne? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say we had some technical difficulties earlier, and we're sorry. And if we blacked out on YouTube or any other platform, you can see now we're back. So people were saying we blacked out for a minute.
I'd like to say, Wayne, to your point about the greens and the experimentation piece, as probably the one plant-based person on the panel, I have been able to successfully, with 20 family members or more, do a greens recipe with liquid smoke. Nobody's elbow, nobody's neck. And they come back and they keep coming back. And the old heads and the young kids and everybody, it does work. I wouldn't do it with you, but I will bring it to you on a day that is not Thanksgiving.
Shout out to the liquid smoke.
Yes.
Shout out.
It's
to
a thing.
all of it.
Okay.
I have liquid smoke. Is really good. Really good.
You gotta have it in your pantry.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do we have any other questions in the chat or comments?
Go ahead,
Um,
Lie.
for Chef G, I was going to ask you. You mentioned some of those herbs that you're marinating in. You didn't say what those herbs were, so I was just going to ask you to give us a little breakdown of what we can build flavor with.
Yeah, so some common herbs that I use in my kitchen is thyme. Thyme is a big one. Thyme, oregano, sage and rosemary. That's two big ones for Thanksgiving specifically. For my turkey, I plan on doing a brine. Brining, it is sodium based, but you can
Yeah.
definitely minimize the sodium and put more herbs than sodium. So you brine the turkey, let it sit for 48 hours is ideal, but you can do 24 hours just to get some more flavor in that turkey. So yeah, sage, thyme, oregano, rosemary. What else? Allspice, that's a big thing in my kitchen. A lot of those Caribbean flavors, like I mentioned from my background, I use them all the time, and it just punches so much flavor into my food.
Okay. And I find that if folks can tolerate it, a little bit of spice goes a long way too. A lot of spice goes a long way.
I'm a big spice woman.
Okay. Karen, you put some spice in those greens with that liquid smoke?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Like I said, the old heads, the kids, they all, it's a hit.
Okay.
It's a hit. Even my Southerners give me the thumbs up. It's legit.
We're gonna have to
I'm
try
gonna bring
them
you some.
not on Thanksgiving. We're gonna
I
have
will
to
bring
try
you
them not
some.
on
I
Thanksgiving.
will bring you some on Thursday.
Do you
Not
add
this
jalapeno
Thursday.
to your greens?
Say again?
Do you add jalapeno to your greens?
I do
Like
not.
jalapeno peppers? Okay.
I do
Mm.
not.
That's
I do
something that
not.
I do.
But you know what I do add? A little Scotch
What?
bonnet.
There you
I
go.
have tried
Right.
Scotch
Yeah. I was gonna say
There's
I
some
add
Caribbean in here.
habanero. Yeah.
Habanero Scotch bonnet.
Not everybody can tolerate the Scotch bonnet. Don't let it
Right.
burst open in your.
Yeah,
Don't let it bust open in the
Don't let
dish.
it bust in the pot.
So
That's
I
right.
want to get
We're
to
really
some
getting
of the
to the secrets
questions we
now.
have from our viewers. A couple questions we have. One is Eric Vicks asks, how do you start a conversation with someone about high blood pressure, about the lower sodium options? How do you start that conversation? Would you just come up, hey, look, I don't want you to stroke out here, so we're going to have to go without the salt this week?
I mean,
Well, one of the
I
things
love
that I
you.
tell people is your taste buds turn over. You get brand new taste buds in your mouth every 2 weeks. So that means that any change that you institute on your palate, like if you drop down the amount of sugar that you're eating or you decrease the amount of salt that you're eating, within 1 week, half of your taste buds are brand new and will now have acclimated to that lower level of salt. And within 2 weeks, if you continue that lower level of salt, that will be your new set point. That will be your new level of saltiness, right? So it's actually, if you could stick with it, get through that first week, you pretty much will have changed your palate in terms of your expectations of salt, and things will now taste too salty when you add, more than the recommended amount of salt. And then the other thing is we should be getting no more than 1,500 milligrams of salt a day. So read those labels and make sure that, the things that you're eating don't add up to more than 1,500. And as somebody said, add the salt at the end and just sprinkle it rather than adding it while you're cooking. So those are that'd be how I would start the conversation.
There you go. And so we have another question from Walter Faggot. What is the nutritional value of DC traditional sweet potato cake for Thanksgiving?
I'm throwing that to one of the chefs.
I'm not from here.
This is the first time I'm hearing about sweet potato cake. I know about sweet potato pie, but I don't know if someone can speak more on what that is. And
it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. There's a sister out of Baltimore.
It is not. Walter, you know what the nutritional value of that cake is.
Listen, doctor, and I know who that questioner is. Listen,
That is the famous Dr.
And then the
Forget.
icing, they put rum in it too.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Come on.
So
Yeah.
I
DC,
think I'm gonna have to try some.
I am the native Washingtonian here. So there's no nutritional value, but there's inspirational and spiritual value in that sweet
Amen.
potato cake.
Amen.
And
It is
so it is highly, if you have a problem with your sugars for some of the older people, or you have diabetes type 2, you might want to stay away from sweet potato cake. That's the
Right.
nutritional value. Thank you very much. Watch my TED Talk on it next week.
And also, if you go eat it, take a little piece and then do your 10-minute walk afterwards.
Exactly. I second
Yeah,
that.
You know,
treadmill.
we used to, it used to be our tradition, my sister and I. It was our tradition many, many years ago, to get up on Thanksgiving morning and go do a really high impact aerobics class. And then that
Okay.
sort of started the day, and we felt less guilty about how we consumed
That's
for dinner.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was
That is
awesome.
I'm going to borrow
I
that.
mean, the
Thank
gym would
you.
be packed out.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
What
have one
happens
more
after
question.
Well,
dinner,
now,
though?
May sisters.
That's another question, Karen.
We have
The
another
couch.
That's a
question.
whole other conversation. Okay, for the chefs,
Heard.
if there were 3 things that our home chefs should keep in mind when preparing for preparing a large meal for family, what are they? 3 things.
Lightning round.
Okay. First thing is when you salt a little bit at a time. If you oversalt, you can pretty much never fix it. So I would say lightly salt throughout and make sure you're constantly tasting what it is that you're seasoning, because it's very easy to over season. Things taste differently once it's actually finished, once it cools down. So make sure you please pay attention to that.
Yep.
Okay.
Same with sugar as well. Less sugar you can always add, but you can never take away. Flavor building marination, I touched on it before, but I'm very big on that. Letting things sit in seasonings and spices over time for hours will get you maximum flavor. Do you want to like take turns? Do you want to just like
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I would say if you're going to cook for a large group of people, it's probably wise to write down your ratios. It's always good to double check. I know a lot of people that want to cook and don't follow recipes and they don't write anything down, but it's important to track what you're doing. That way you can actually, make sure that it's good, and also just kind of practice it first, like they said, before you just say, hey, this is it, just give it a test run and get some taste testers in front of you.
And then
That's it.
Oh, wait, that's it?
That's it.
Chef Justice can't get her last one in?
That's it.
Okay.
We are out of time.
Oh, man.
I mean, if we had skipped the Jamaican,
this-
we could have gotten her piece in.
This has been really, really fun. Thank you all. You've been a wealth of knowledge. I got some tips I'm taking away. And I hope the Be Health Empowered family listening out there did the same. Thank you, Karen, for working on this show together. Thank you, of course, to Miss Lila Mays and Mr. Wayne Bruce for making it happen every week. Have a wonderful and blessed Thanksgiving, full of gratitude and joy, everybody. And until we see you next time, be wise, be well, and be health empowered. Thanks for tuning in.